Tesla had a highly anticipated event called We Robot that showcased the company's ambitious vision for the future of autonomous transportation and robotics. There were some pretty key announcements at this event that included things like the Cybercab, which is a two-seater autonomous vehicle without a steering wheel or pedals that has an expected cost allegedly of under $30,000 and a projected operating cost of 20 to 30 cents per mile. They also unveiled the RoboVan, a large autonomous vehicle for up to 20 passengers, or a goods transport that's basically being positioned as a solution for high density urban transport. Elon Musk talked about full self driving, FSD. There are plans to launch unsupervised FSD in Texas and California by 2025. And that's going to start with the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y. And last but certainly not least, they showcased the Optimus humanoid robot. They showed Optimus robots performing tasks like bartending and playing games at the event, and projected that the retail price would be $20,000 to $30,000. Elon Musk also claimed the Optimus would be able to perform a wide range of household tasks once it comes out. However, the event also drew a bit of criticism for a lack of concrete timelines and maybe some misleading demonstrations, like Musk admitted to being optimistic with timeframes, with production dates for Cybercab set vaguely for, quote, before 2027. Reports did start coming out that suggested the Optimus robots at the event were teleoperated rather than fully autonomous. There are a ton of questions about, can Tesla actually gain approval for vehicles without traditional controls like a steering wheel or pedals? There's existing safety concerns already related to existing FSD technology. There's been scrutiny following some accidents and basically a bunch of questions. Are we actually ready for full autonomy? And critics also just noted a shortage of concrete information on how any of these technologies would handle adverse situations or complex scenarios. Now, biggest thing was the market also weighed in because the day after the event, Tesla stock plummeted by 9%. So, Paul, let's first talk about the event itself. You're a Tesla owner, you're an AI expert, close follower of what Tesla's doing. I think you've got a more solid perspective on this than most people out there. Like, what did you take away from this event and what it means for AI?
Yeah, so I think the reason we're going to cover this as a main topic today is because what Tesla's doing matters in the sense that it's a prelude to other industries pursuing autonomy. So if you think about, and I'll explain what that means in a moment, but basically, as we look at their effort to drive autonomy into the auto industry, you can step back and think about how this will play out as agents start coming into your industry that in theory can do the work of the human, initially with human supervision, and then maybe eventually without human supervision. So I see the autonomous vehicle industry as a great preview of what we are all going to face in our own industries. So with that being said, this was originally supposed to be in August. They delayed it to October for whatever reason. They didn't say, but the assumption was they just weren't ready. It's probably best to describe this as a show. They did show the robo taxi or cyber cabs. They previewed this van. They had the robots that were absolutely human controlled. Like, I'm actually still shocked that people weren't sure on site whether they were or not. Like, within 3 seconds of hearing one of them speak the first time, it was very obvious that these were not robots talking. This was not a language model talking to you. So the robots were absolutely controlled. They said, I think if you asked the robot on site, they said they were human assisted is how they explained it, but they were 100% like being controlled by humans and the voices were coming from humans. So it was a show. The most near term potential one is the Cybercab, which is the two-seater, no steering wheel. If you read the Elon Musk bio by Walter Isaacson, it actually tells the origin story of the Cybercab. There's like a great background of Elon Musk's efforts to have them build the thing with no steering wheel and his engineers fighting him over it and all this stuff. So he did say that between probably 2026 before 2027, and this is where his timelines become optimistic. But here's my thoughts on The full self-driving. So my current Tesla has full self-driving supervised is what they call it. If there's anybody that also has one, 12.5.4.1, that is the current release version I have of this.
Yeah.
So they've been on a schedule where they're updating the software every like 2 to 3 weeks. You'll get a push and it'll go 12.4.5, 12.4.6, and eventually they'll jump to 13 whenever the next breakthrough is, I guess. So I'm going to share the experience here because I think it is instructive of how agentic systems might learn and might play out in your industry. So the Tesla today that I have, the full self-driving, which you can just put an address in and hit go, and it will drive you on city streets, on highways and everything. It is level 2 in terms of autonomy. We'll put a link to the SAE levels of driving automation in the show notes. There is actually an industry standard for what levels of autonomy are in the industry. Basic premise is, what does the driver do? That's how they kind of determine these. So the full self-driving supervised that Tesla currently has is level 2. So if you think about this in your job, let's say your CRM or your accounting system or your legal analysis system, the human's got to be there at all times, in control, responsible for the outcomes of the system. That's kind of what level 2 is. The human is totally in the loop at all times. Waymo is level 4. If anybody's been in a Waymo out in, California or Arizona or whatever. But Waymo can't scale like commercially because they have a hardware problem. They're ugly. They have massive systems on the cars. Like, they're not like a beautiful Tesla. So Waymo's got a hardware problem. Tesla's trying to solve a software problem. The problem they currently face, and this is why I don't understand how the Cybercab works, if it is drizzling out, my full self-driving is useless. It will either shut itself off or it'll say it's degraded and it can't do what it's supposed to do because there's raindrops on one of the cameras. It can't function if it's snowing out for the same reasons. If one of the cameras gets blocked, the system is useless. They never talk about this. I've asked online, can someone explain to me how they're going to solve this? I don't know how they solve that. It still makes simple errors. It'll swerve into the berm when you're trying to get off the freeway. It'll go at wrong speeds. It'll change lanes unnecessarily. It'll cut people off. Like, it still does this. Now, if you follow Elon and like the Tesla fan people online, you don't hear this. Now, part of it is because in California, I think they actually label the data for specifically for routes where there's a lot of Teslas, including Elon's personal routes.
Yeah.
So Elon's experience driving a Tesla is actually very different than mine because the engineers are labeling the data on his routes to make sure that it's like perfect for what he's doing. So the way they do this is they monitor miles per disengagement. So to disengage the system is I have to take over. Like, the human has to grab control of the system and say, okay, I'm back in control. When you do that in a Tesla, a prompt pops up and says, why did you disengage? Send us a voice thing. And you can actually click the voice button and record up to 15 seconds and tell them why you did it. So think of this when you start using agents in your company next year, you have to think of actions per intervention is kind of like the term I started coming up with myself this morning, thinking about this. So if I'm going to use an AI agent to do my emails or to do my customer service or to do my sales outreach, how often do I, as the human, have to intervene and stop the agent from doing something wrong or fix something it did? And so that's basically how they're doing it. And I think I heard Elon recently say they wanted to get to 10,000 miles per disengagement is like their current goal. And then eventually like 1 million miles driven per disengagement, meaning they don't ever want the human to have to like interact with this thing. When I use the thing on city streets, I can't imagine going more than 2 to 3 miles without a disengagement. I do it all the time. On highways, maybe you can get 12 on a straight stretch. You have to intervene all the time. This is what I think agents are going to be like. So when we hear about agents in our careers and our businesses, I envision having these cool systems. And when they work, they're amazing. Like, full self-driving is incredible when it works. But a lot of times it doesn't. And then I have to interact with it to tell it what's wrong. And I think that's how agents are going to work. Like, we're going to have these email and customer service and sales agents, but we're going to have to oversee them. We're going to have to intervene. And the software companies are going to have to monitor how often are we intervening? Like, what's going on? And if they see spikes in it, they're going to know their agents aren't working properly. And so that's like something to keep in mind. And then I realized the other day, like the breakthrough for them is going to come when I can talk to my Tesla. So right
Yeah.
now I can send a voice clip to Tesla saying, here's why I disengaged it. But I was thinking about it the other day because like when you have your GPS and you say, I want to go to work, and
Yeah.
then it's routing me, it's like, no, 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 I'm going to go around. I want to go a different direction. I have to disengage the system, put a new address in, or I have to tell it to go a different way. Or I just have to like disengage and go the other way. It won't hear me. It won't like know to change the route. And so I realized like when these language models are built in, when XAI builds Grok into a Tesla, and I can now talk to Grok and tell it, hey, reroute me this way because I know there's construction up ahead that you car don't know about. And now I'm just talking and prompting my car. And I don't know if that's near term, but like that will change the way these Teslas work. And so again, I don't, I think it's amazing what they're doing. I don't think the tech is anywhere near what they're presenting it to be. I don't think we're really that close to having robocabs that don't need steering wheels without all the cameras that Waymos have.
Mhm.
But as a final thought here, on Sunday morning, I woke up and I watched the Starship launch. I don't know if you saw this, Mike, but this is the fifth
Yeah.
flight of Starship. This is Elon Musk's rocket that he wants to take humans to Mars with. So if you haven't followed along, SpaceX is an incredible company, engineering marvel they're putting out. So me and my kids and my wife watched the launch of this thing. Now, if you didn't follow along, the goal of this one, because it's all experimental still, was to get the Starship up into orbit and then, or into the atmosphere, above the atmosphere, and then bring the booster back and land a 232 foot, almost the size of a football field, 250 metric ton booster and catch it with basically two arms coming off of the tower. It was the most asinine thing when they first presented this. People were like, there's no way you're ever going to do this. Mechazilla, I think they call it. The arms that kind of, come and cut. They did it. On the first try, they caught a 250-ton booster out of the air with two legs. Like it just lands on this thing gently. The booster just sits in the air and then it just lands on this thing. I mean, it almost brings tears to your eyes. Like I'm watching this thinking, how did humans do this?
Yeah.
It was like one of the most awe-inspiring things I've ever seen happen. And people thought he was crazy to do this. So what I realized in that moment is like, as much as Elon's current behavior on Twitter X drives me insane, like as much time as he's spending on politics and creating like divides and like it drives me nuts. And I don't care what side of political party you're on. It's like the way he's using his platform is divisive to one party or the other. I just wish he was spending more time accelerating us toward a better world for humanity. Because even with all the time he's spending tweeting and doing all the other stuff he's doing, he's still driving humanity forward in a way very few people have ever done in human history. And it is amazing to watch. And it's like a beautiful thing to be alive to see these kinds of innovations and scientific breakthroughs and consistently doing the impossible. And so I just like, as much as I get bothered by like the online behavior, I have to recognize like the impact he's making on humanity. And so that leads me back to like, he can achieve anything. Like what he's building with XAI, what he's doing with all it, it's remarkable. And there's other people out there trying to do similar things. And so it's just kind of one of those moments where like you realize humans are pretty incredible and just kudos to the engineers at SpaceX that did this. And so while the We Robot event was sort of disappointing and the cyber cabs aren't coming for 2, 3, 4 years and the RoboVan may never happen and the Tesla Optimus robots may not be functional for 5 years, like he'll get there if he wants to is
Yeah.
kind of my main takeaway here. And it's a pretty amazing thing that humans can do this sort of stuff.